A simple note left at a diner table transforms the life of a struggling single mom and sets off a chain of events no one could have imagined. The neon sign outside the diner flickered against the rain-streaked night, a stubborn light refusing to give up, much like the man who now pushed open the glass door. His broad shoulders sagged under the weight of another grueling shift at the steel plant, the kind of weariness that burrowed deep into his bones. Long hours and aching hands were familiar companions, but tonight something different tugged at him. He didn't want to collapse on the couch just yet. He needed a moment to breathe, to find solace in a warm plate in a quiet corner. Inside, the diner hummed softly, chatter blending with the clatter of utensils. The air carried the smell of fried food and coffee left too long on the burner. Sliding into a booth by the window, he let the rain outside become his backdrop, streaks of water catching and distorting the glow of streetlights. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a pause. It wasn't until she appeared at his table that he noticed her. She couldn't have been much older than 22, but the heaviness in her eyes made her seem far older. Her blonde hair, escaping a hastily tied ponytail, framed a face that wore exhaustion like a second skin. The stains on her uniform told stories of rushes and relentless hours. "Hi," she said, her voice barely audible, a fragile thread of sound against the diner's low hum. She fumbled with her notepad, avoiding his gaze. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee to start," he replied, his voice low but kind. He saw it immediately, the glisten in her eyes she tried so hard to hide. She turned quickly, but not before swiping at her face with her sleeve. Something in his chest tightened. He didn't know her story, but the weight she carried was clear, and it unsettled him in a way he couldn't shake. When she returned with the coffee, her hands trembled slightly as she set the cup down. His gaze caught the faint smudges of ink on her fingers. Marks of someone juggling too much, too fast. Her red, weary eyes darted around, avoiding direct contact. "Anything else?" she asked, her voice breaking just enough to betray the careful mask she wore. He hesitated, sensing her fragility, then shook his head. "Just the coffee for now." As she walked away, he watched her retreat to the counter, where she leaned heavily against the wall. She stared blankly at the order slips above the grill, her shoulders sagging, her hands rising to dab at her eyes when she thought no one was looking. When she returned a few minutes later, he spoke, his voice careful, almost hesitant. "Rough night?" Her body stiffened slightly before offering a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Something like that." "You seem tired," he said gently, the warmth in his tone inviting, rather than intrusive. "Maybe more than tired." Her gaze faltered, dropping to the floor. For a moment he thought she'd brush him off, but then she took a shaky breath. "It's been a lot," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Too much, really." He nodded, giving her the space to continue. "You want to talk about it?" Her surprise was evident, her lips parting as though the thought hadn't even occurred to her. No, it's fine," she stammered, though her voice cracked under the weight of the lie. "I shouldn't. I mean, you're just here for coffee." "Sometimes," he said softly, "talking to a stranger can help more than you think." She hesitated, her eyes darting to the counter where her coworkers bustled. Then, as though surrendering to a weight too heavy to bear alone, she spoke, her words spilling out in broken fragments. "It's just, I'm working double shifts, trying to keep everything together. My little girl, she's 2. She needs so much. And her dad—" Her voice caught, a fragile pause stretching between them. "He left, walked out, and now it's just me. I'm doing everything I can, but it never feels like enough. I feel like I'm drowning." Her words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. He could see the pain she carried, the way she fought to hold herself together when everything around her seemed to be falling apart. "I'm sorry," she added quickly, stepping back as if realizing she'd said too much. "I didn't mean to dump all that on you. You don't need to hear my problems." "Don't apologize," he said, his voice steady but soft. "Sometimes just saying it out loud helps ease the burden a little." Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles, though her eyes still carried the storm within them. "Thanks," she murmured. I should get back to work." He nodded, watching her disappear behind the counter again. This time her movements seemed slower, her steps weighed down by the invisible chains she had so reluctantly revealed. He nodded, watching her disappear behind the counter again. This time her movements seemed slower, her steps weighed down by the invisible chains she had so reluctantly revealed. As he sat with his coffee, her story replayed in his mind. It wasn't unique. He had seen similar struggles in others. But something about her vulnerability struck a chord deep within him. She was young, too young to carry so much pain, and that was when he decided.